Well, playoff groups continue. It's week 2, or rather day 2, I should say, here in the CCL playoffs. My name is McCormiel. With me is Cash. We've got the West Virginia University Mountaineers going up against Florida Gulf Coast University inside of a Group F matchup inside of groups for the CCL playoffs. And Cash, well, this one is going to be interesting to say the least, because there's some different things about these rosters that we have to get out of the way. First and foremost, we'll just look at the head-to-head before we start talking about anything too specific.
Yeah, so as we get into the head-to-head here and just kind of get a basic understanding of what we're looking at in this series, West Virginia come into this 17-4, 18-6 overall on the hard point, 12-5 across the search, 9-5 in control, and on the other side, Florida Gulf Coast come in at 10-9, 13-10 in hard point, 8-10, and 8-8 in the other two modes respectively. So looking at this on paper, definitely favoring West Virginia early, but as you had mentioned, there's some stuff to talk about with it.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we'll just talk about Florida Gulf Coast University here specifically on the right-hand side of the screen. For the Thunderbirds, it was a bit of a mid-season shakeup as Mr. Josh Kirchner will no longer be with the Florida Gulf Coast University roster. In comes a sub for their team, so we will be seeing a different four-man group out of Florida Gulf Coast University. However, Tippin, Beeser, and Justin will still remain with the Thunderbirds roster going forward. I believe Petty is that fourth inside of the overall roster, but again, this is a team that was looking very good in the mid portion of the season. Stage 1 specifically. They got to Stage 2. That's when the struggles started. And of course, a few weeks before playoffs, there were some things that happened in the background that unfortunately basically made ineligible Josh Kirchner, a.k.a. Kirchy, and he is no longer with the Thunderbirds in this season. So, going forward into the playoffs, they did just beat Clemson in the LCQ to get to this point. However, beating West Virginia, it's going to be a completely different story than beating that Clemson team. Not to say anything negative about the Clemson team, but West Virginia is just a different breed. Also, Cash, inside of this group overall, it's a very tricky situation for them to be in, because not only do they have West Virginia in their groups, but they also have the University of Michigan, and of course that top dog that has gone toe-to-toe and beat Bay State and other collegiate leagues, Northwood.
Yeah, and 'tis season, right? It's playoff time. You know the road only gets harder as you go on, but being in, I guess what you could call the group of death, this is definitely one that's going to be challenging for not only whoever wins, but especially looking at FGCU. And if they even take this against West Virginia, yeah, they've got their work cut out for them, to say the least.
Take a look at our map set overall. First map will be a Berlin hardpoint. Then, of course, as you'll see here in just a moment, we've got a triple dosage of our favorite map here inside of Vanguard Tuscan. I don't know what it is, but Cash and I here in the CCL recently have just had extremely good / bad luck, I guess you can kind of phrase that up as, because I love Tuscan. Tuscan's a great map. Seeing it on all the modes is phenomenal as well. But, you know, it's negative as well because we don't get to see too much of a different look on specific maps, but it also gives us more to talk about in terms of going back to the same map in those specific modes. So, triple dose of Tuscan in the middle will end things off if we need go the distance with a Bocage, Search, and Destroy. But Cash, let's just talk about map number 1 specifically. Losing your captain for FGCU has been the focal point of troubles over the last few weeks. Going into this against the West Virginia Mountaineers, you know, at least you come off of a Clemson W, so what does that do for confidence going into a series and your first playoff game overall that truly counts towards the next portion?
Yeah, it definitely does a lot as far as confidence goes. Of course, getting a win, like you said, nothing wrong with the Clemson team, of course, a reputable team. But again, just getting that win nonetheless is something that can just put a little bit of wind in your sails, breathe some life into your veins as you go up against competition. Every win is going to build confidence in the squad. And of course, you know, you're not going to win them all, but they have been doing well thus far. And so, yeah, coming into this series tonight against the West Virginia team that, again, on paper looks much better. Definitely momentum they can ride and just try to chip away early at this. Start by taking it one map at a time. Of course, you can't look too far ahead in the series. Just take it with what's right in front of you. And right now, that's going to be a Berlin point.
If you're just joining us from Alpha, welcome. The West Virginia University Mountaineers going up against Florida Gulf Coast University in a Group F matchup in the Eastern region for CCL playoffs. Justin will open things up with the first blood, but Benny will be there for an instantaneous trade. The Mutineers do a nice job of getting on the board. It's an all-blue kill feed that leaves in a 3-1 trade, and now Tippin's the last one alive over at the point. So a beautiful break for the Mountaineers. We'll get them in towards that hill, and of course now FGCU going to be spawning out over towards P3, trying to break back on into P1.
This hit coming in from statues, players coming out of P3, like you had said, and already on the rotation is going to be Beeser looking ahead at P2. This is going to be good eyes forward for them just to try to get map presence early and get lanes locked on rotation, but cutting straight through the mid-map where they've had control is going to be West Virginia, trying to cut these players off on P2 rotation, but again, little do they know Beeser, he's already here, so this could spell trouble.
Beeser playing a nice position, hasn't given it away just yet, but finally will. All the way in the back, we'll find Mr. Toxic and cut down the Mountaineers as they start to make their way up the map. In towards the point now, though, FGCU have done a nice job getting themselves out early on the rotation. It's net them the first 10 seconds of time here inside of P2, but as the contest comes in, Mr. Toxic is going to be there. 3 go to the side of the Mountaineers, and once again, Florida Gulf Coast University is on the outside looking in. They're going to have to come from the right side of the map all the way across to the left. The good news is at least you have Tippin out on the dock side to make that push just a bit easier, but that AR is going to have to lock down that lane if you want to see the light of day back in towards P2. Ethan in for 3 in a row and a double that'll cut everybody down and give himself 25 seconds to work with here towards the end of the hill.
It was an early break that got them 40 seconds of P1 time, and now already have 20 seconds off of P2 where they hadn't initially won the rotation. So West Virginia doing a great job off the rip of just being in your face and contesting everything, making Florida Gulf Coast earn every bit of points that they have, now just eclipsing that 30-point mark. It is West Virginia with the advantage on rotation for P4, but a quick pinch play developing here for Florida Gulf Coast. We'll see if they can capitalize.
Mr. Toxic out towards the left side. Petty actually misses those shots all the way in the pack, so that is going to be good enough for the Mountaineers to keep those spawns. Justin, MP40, slides around, maybe tries to find the third, but good news. West Virginia, they'll stick in towards that point. So the Thunderbirds, they're going to need another break here in towards P3. They haven't been really able to break back into hills after the Mountaineers start to move their way up the map. Pistol out the side door. Tippin going to be there. Switches to the MP40 now on 4 in a row. Good news. Justin's there for a trade on to Ethan. With 30 seconds left, the Mountaineers continue to run that score up just a bit by bit. Gosh, this is where it gets scary, because if you're the Mountaineers, one good rotation over towards P4 here could spell disaster for the game, specifically if FGCU can't combat it.
It absolutely could, and West Virginia, that's the first hill that they won rotation to, and wouldn't you know it, they got a near 60-second hold off of that. So like you were mentioning, for Florida Gulf Coast, it has to be a big response here on a very scrappy hill. It is very hard to get substantial amounts of time. So once again, West Virginia, if they could just keep them off the hill, that's going to be a win for them. For Florida Gulf Coast, you do have to keep West Virginia off, but also find a way to get bits and pieces of time. They've opened it up here with the first 10 seconds fairly cleanly, but with players coming through train and now through the back, they've got their hands full.
One player that I got to talk to before the season started for Florida Gulf Coast University actually was Captain Kirchie when he was still on the roster. And one of the players that he highlighted for me and brought attention to was Justin at 12-7 here on the Berlin thus far. He's been a budding star for this Florida Gulf Coast University roster, and it's been a big reason why they've been able to perform the way they have throughout the entirety of the season. So you'll look for him to be a big standout in the series if they want to go ahead and find themselves not only a net win in map number 1, but potentially even a win in this best-of-5 series. Tipping on the outside, Vinny tries the shots at a long range, won't get tagged up just yet. Beaster holding on to the time here in P4. Shots are going to be there, won't be able to connect. However, they've done enough to get themselves a net amount of time here, get themselves close enough to where it's about a 30-point game now. The Mountaineers do have the rotations, but it's all white in the kill feed. Florida Gulf Coast and the Thunderbirds, they're winning those gunfights close to the next hill.
And they put themselves one hill away from taking the lead now within 30 points. I said they needed to get a substantial amount of time. They do that. They needed to keep West Virginia off the hill. They also did that. So where Florida Gulf Coast and the Thunderbirds needed to step up and make a big play to keep themselves in the game, they do just that. But where they need to continue to improve in this hard point is having success on the break. They have yet to show that. They're getting broken easily. There they corrected that mistake, but now it's their turn to try to break into a hill that West Virginia is holding. If they can do that, they can turn this game around. But West Virginia getting clean time the first 20-30 seconds off of this P5, and Florida Gulf Coast, they just haven't been close.
Yeah, you mentioned the struggle of being able to break the Mountaineers and their setups. That's been the pain point for FGCU thus far inside of map number 1. They've been able to rotate out well, and once they do, they're able to, hold a majority of the time for themselves. But when it comes to being able to win those gunfights and break on in towards the point, that's where they struggle the most. We'll hope to see that turnaround in the second half of rotations here. Either way, Petty's going to be able to find one out towards the dock side. Sire is going to come all the way through from behind. Won't be able to find the trade, but the good news is Florida Gulf Coast is still going to be in towards that point. 10 seconds going to go their way, but I like the patience here from us down on the bottom of the map. And of course, you have everybody else on the Mountaineers trying to make their way and wrapping in towards the point. Beaster with 2, Justin with 1. It's a 4-1 trade. Florida Gulf Coast University finding their way back here on Berlin.
And this is where they were broken initially on P1, and West Virginia really opened up with a near 60-point lead to kick the game off. They hold off that wave of attack, so a win for Florida Gulf Coast. They still have a 40-point deficit to come back from, but they're holding off hits and really finding their footing in this map. Of course, 3 fall, and that'll grant clearance to West Virginia, but you get 40 seconds of that time initially. So now you have yourself spawns on rotation. West Virginia overextend to get scrap time for P1, put themselves in the bind. These gunfights here, this 2v2 on P2 is going to be huge.
Tipping on the staircase, patiently waiting for anybody to challenge in towards P2. And he's sitting in the corner, is going to be able to find that first blood, and now you're going to see everybody else, the X-ray vision, all the way on the outside of the docks. Going to pinch on in towards that point and make it look effortless. So, Florida Gulf Coast, they've done a nice job of getting set up for P1, P2 here. However, it's not net them a ton of time, and the Mountaineers were able to break into P2 almost instantaneously. Cash, this is one of those situations where it's like, okay, if the Mountaineers get all the time here and eclipse that 200-point mark, this is kind of a game that feels over.
It is, and for Florida, they got a near full 60 on one of the harder hills to accumulate significant amount of times. Since then, they've only obtained about 30 seconds, and that's just unfortunate because you thought you had momentum going into the next set of hills, and West Virginia, props to them for really shutting that down. They tightened up where they were kind of getting a little lax in the mid-game. They cleaned up their rotations and their breaks, and once again, like you said, find themselves near eclipsing that 200-point mark. Once again, for Gulf Coast, it's got to be a substantial hold here on P3, but West Virginia, the way they've just been flying around the map and getting in the face and really just making Florida Gulf Coast play uncomfortably, I expect them to get a quick break here, because if they do, well, they stand a chance to put themselves within one hill of winning.
8-13 from Tippin. Not the best performance in the world, but you look to Justin at 26-16. Somebody needs to step up and help the young superstar on this Florida Gulf Coast University roster. Ethan looks to the back door. Beaster's going to be able to slide around the corner. Pinstripe kill feed back and forth. Nobody's been able to find 2 succinct kills. And of course, the trades that go back and forth there are going to be massive because they leave Florida Gulf Coast in a great spot. However, it's Mr. Toxic who's able to fly through the door, get 2. Cyro is going to be there for a trade as well. It's all going to come down to one last player from FGCU, and the time keeps dwindling in the favor of West Virginia. I thought maybe, just maybe, you find that last kill there, but 204 to 137, and it's once again the rotation for West Virginia.
Now can win it on this hill and the map spread that they have, cutting these players down on rotation. They have one player still around train station, but they have an idea that players could be spawning in the back. It's going to be Ethan getting this information on the trail, just trying to chase them down. You start to see those arrows turn, but it's going to be spawns in the back for Florida Gulf Coast. West Virginia have to find a way to get back in. The first 15 seconds ticked off with no one earning time, and Florida Gulf Coast have put themselves in a position to start earning time here. Once again on P4, is it too little, too late?
Remains to be seen. We'll have to watch over the course of this next hill, and of course the rotation to P5. Let's see what the West Virginia Mountaineers will do as they start to make their way up the map. First kill there to Cyro. Going to be 1, but be sure with a double. It's going to allow him to find himself on 5 in a row. Stays down. Shots to Ethan are good from Justin. He's got some help. Petty will fall, but Justin is there for another kill as well. He's eclipsed the 30-point mark at 32 here inside of map number 1. You look to Beaster, who's now on 6 in a row. One more kill will get the glide bomb, which would be so big if you're able to go ahead and get it. There it is. So, glide bomb, utility to work with for Florida Gulf Coast University. A 20-point game now in favor of West Virginia. However, it's that rotation to P5, and you can see all those white arrows. They're swarming around the point. Justin, Beaster with 2. Ethan there. Trades coming in, and Beaster and Petty will knock down the last one. Florida Gulf Coast, they are resilient here in map number 1.
Beaster on 9, and they have P5 control. A couple players fall to get them off the time, but you still have a little bit of work to do. Closed it to, once again, we see that 30-40 point hang up, that mark that Florida Gulf Coast just can't cross. They get wiped, and now it's West Virginia with mid-map control, cutting the players off spawn coming from P4 and the far right side of the map. So it just, West Virginia, they remain in control with having the win conditions set the way that they have by really doing the hard work and the lead work, getting that lead out to a substantial margin. They've given themselves a little wiggle room for error where Florida Gulf Coast have to fly at this. Of course, you can't win it on this hill any longer, but you'll put yourself within 2 seconds. So where Florida Gulf Coast need every second of scrap time, well, they've also got to win rotations, and they have the spawn, so things are lined up for them.
Oh, but Ethan could be huge here. You're going to be able to find the first. Second one's going to challenge to the doorway. The last one there. Beaster almost falls, but it's Petty and Beaster who pair for two. Brady might have just saved the game there with that kill, but Mr. Toxic now coming on the staircase from the back. Mr. Toxic with number 2. You start pushing up. Spawn still there for Florida Gulf Coast. You got to be wary of the player now making his way through Fire and Cyaro. And towards the point, though, Tippin's going to be able to win the first gunfight. Streak over the top. You get the second, now the third. 245 to 200. Florida Gulf Coast University, they're starting to make their way back, but they need to read the flip of the spawns that just happened, and they will. So they're going to turn around over towards the point. Florida Gulf Coast, they can hold on here, but they're still going to have to rotate over towards P2, where the Mountaineers, they just need to hit P1.
One more break. They just need 5 seconds. So for Florida Gulf Coast, this has to come down to perfect timing. Petty's in a wonderful position in mid-map and around Fountain, just not letting anyone slip through. But it doesn't matter. West Virginia are able to get on and get the last 5 seconds of time there. A valiant comeback from Gulf Coast to show signs of life behind some streaks and good gunplay. But it just wasn't enough to lead a bit too much. West Virginia was able to accumulate.
I thought there at the end that Florida Gulf Coast was going to be able to win the majority of those one-on-ones, but it was the Mountaineers who make their way in towards P1, break them out, and of course find those final 5 seconds of time that they needed. It was a well-rounded game from West Virginia. However, Florida Gulf Coast, off the backhand of Justin's 36 and Beaster's 29, were almost able to complete that comeback. It got damn close towards the end of that game. It was a 100-point deficit at one point, and although they still end up losing by about 40 points, you still have to tip the performance there towards the end of the game. So overall statistics for West Virginia, sure, you don't have the flashy 36 kills, but again, the pain points once again came from Tippin at 12 and 22. Just you look at the other side, and there's just really no room for error. It could have been a lot closer of a game if the slaying was there, but at least you got a minute and 2 seconds in the hill to kind of go along with that. So consolation prizes at the very least. Thoughts on map number 1, Cash?
I feel like Ethan started really hot and just kind of had like a quiet 31 and 22. Wasn't doing anything super flashy in the kill feed, had a couple of moments, but also led the team in hill time. So a wonderful stat line put up from Ethan in West Virginia. And then, like you had said, for Florida Gulf Coast, a couple of pain points and consolation prizes here or there, but it's going to have to be tightened up by the couple of other players. You just can't afford to have multiple players having slow starts or slow nights. Hopefully for Florida Gulf Coast, they can turn these performances around in the S&D, but a very solid and all-around good performance from West Virginia in map number 1.
Well, map number 1 has came and gone. West Virginia, they've given us some good things to talk about, tidbits of information that we can bring into the search and destroy. For Florida Gulf Coast, on the other hand, though, I think the main kind of topic that we have to talk about here is what's the difference here in the search and destroy as you go to a Tuscan? Well, Justin, I think, leads the example there because on Berlin, you're able to put up 36 with a submachine gun. That only is exemplified of what you can do on Tuscan when you go to a search and destroy in the next map. So I think the big thing is if you can get Justin hot early on, the team can rally behind that, especially with Beaster and Tippin being able to hold back on long angles. You give them the ARs in hand, you allow them to feast like that. It's going to be a recipe for success for FGCU. On the opposite side, though, for West Virginia, I looked to the all-around just great performance. There was a lot of times where I saw them go to break a hard point. It wasn't a solo push. It wasn't 2 people that pushed. Everybody set up, and then they broke in. It was the patience that allowed them to take map number 1, and if they didn't break those first 10, 15 seconds, they waited until that 20-second mark if they needed to. They broke in, and then they net themselves 40 seconds of time. It's the very small intangibles that add the levels to what Call of Duty is, and West Virginia one-upped FGCU in map number 1. That's the things you need to resurrect and recorrect from map 2.
Yeah, and you really just had a perfect segue into what I wanted to see West Virginia replicate in the search and destroy. You talked about their breakability, but just on a wider scale, just their ability to retake and how that replicates in search and destroy is retaking bomb sites and how coordinated they were. Like you said, it wasn't just a solo push and someone popped a 4-piece to break a hill. It was a collective effort from all 4 players. I expect to see that if they find themselves in XD odd situations, teammates pairing up and really trying to work around the map. So for West Virginia, the teamwork and the coordination is there. I do hope to see that replicated in the search and destroy, however that looks for them. But like you said, for Florida Gulf Coast, hope is not lost. You are able to rectify the mistakes. Where things kind of went sour for you, but you also had signs of promise in the Berlin hardpoint. So again, you stand a chance there in Tuscan, especially like you'd mentioned, Justin, with the SMG. Can have that as a playground. You just got to find a way to stay up and get him to his hot positions, and you'll stand a fair chance. But stay within striking distance, of course. That makes it easier. In that Berlin, they kept themselves a little too far out of it to where by the time they accumulated a substantial amount of time, all West Virginia needed was 1 quick break. So if they can keep it a little bit tighter, they definitely stand a chance to draw this series up 1-1.
Well, if you're a Thunderbird fan or a Dirty Bird, you're going to hope that FGCU can pull out a map number 2 win. We look overall, just on paper, at the records between these two teams. For FGCU, an 8-10 record for Search and Destroy specifically on the season. They were pretty decent when Captain Kirchie was on the team, and these are the situations where you're going to miss Kirchie the most. It's those game 2s when you're down 0-1, and you want that vocal leader in the background to say, hey, boys, let's pick it up. Let's step it up here. Let's just play our game. And trudge the map ahead, and if you need to duke it out to 11 rounds, so be it. But it's that battle of attrition that they were so good at when Kirchie was on the roster. That's not to downplay anything about this current FGCU roster, because they did just ice up against Clemson and now have found themselves in a situation where they could at least start their playoff run in Group F of the Eastern Conference with a 1-0 start. Now, obviously down 0-1 going into a Search and Destroy, it's not looking great for them, but it's not looking necessarily too bad either. Offensive try here for the side of FGCU. It's going to make its way over towards that A site. Suns and Aids over the top, but it should be the first blood to the Mountaineers, and it will, as Sayaro all the way in the back will find one with the way of automaton.
Petty able to respond with the grenade, but that is going to put bomb down over on Florida Gulf Coast side. CU players now just trying to find a pick at the top. A 3v3 standoff here, really almost like mirroring sides of the map. All of these players in equal positioning, but it is going to be Ethan with a grenade able to clear out this A site, and with bomb down, that is going to be a massive really condition for Florida Gulf Coast to be able to get back in this round. Not only are you down a man, but you are also without objective and no semblance of getting any kind of control anytime soon. West Virginia not giving up any information for free. Justin just trying to hunt around and get information, but as that happens, loses the teammate.
They haven't spotted out Justin just yet. Able to find the first one at the top of the church. Could hop out over towards the field side and probably will here in just a moment. However, both the players for the Mountaineers, they're just watching the field side, waiting for Justin to start making his way up the map. Automaton in hand. 22 seconds left to get the bomb and or get the 2 kills that he needs to win this round. Slide challenge out to the left. Going to be able to spot the first. Headshot's going to be there. Snaps to the second. Okay! Welcome, Justin, to the big stage. Hey, Poppy! That's a 1-0 lead for FGCU.
My gosh, I thought he was dead to rights. I thought he had to be, but Justin, welcome to CCO playoffs. If you haven't heard anything before, well, you have now. It gets a little bit mixy here, and Justin, what he thought was dead to rights, ends up taking a round where it was a 1v3 situation, and Florida Gulf Coast had to clutch up. Like to see a little more, clean, tight rounds out of them. But hey, that's one way to get it done, and Justin finds himself on 3 early.
It's just not fair. That guy's a good-looking dude. He's got a great shot when it comes to Call of Duty. He's winning in every aspect, and that's just not fair. Escapes in the middle of the map. Oh, almost turns on Ethan. Ethan's going to run away. Beaster's going to be there on the head glitch. Ethan tries for it. Slides around the corner. They are not letting him get an easy kill on anybody. Justin with a nade for number 4 in a row. Now Zayaro left alive in a 1 versus 3. Justin's going to be the first one up to challenge, so there's the streaks off the board for Florida Gulf Coast. But now they can just play together. It would be another 1 versus 3 here, this time for the Mountaineers.
Lost the first blood battle. Now find themselves in a similar situation to what Florida was just in the last round, where it's a 1vx situation. And, if Cyro could really pull off what Justin just did, then, hey, I warn it. Like, I hope we see it, but I don't think it's happening. These players playing fairly passive here, just looking over the mid-map and able to get the timing to work out. So Florida find themselves up 2 rounds early in the Search and Destroy. This is how we wanted to see them come out in response to that hard point. And not only do they, set themselves up to be within striking distance, but they take the lead early.
2 nice rounds. Bounce back from map 1. Justin got them going with a 1 versus 3 clutch in round number 1 there, though. They had the advantage early on. They don't allow Ethan to get a quick kill through the middle of the map. And now they go back to the offensive side. Last time, no, it was Sayaro all the way out towards that left side of the field that was able to get the first blood. They're going to back him off with Suns and Nades here. But Sayaro on the flank this time is going to be able to spot 1. Get shots on the Beaster. Won't chase the follow, but it'll go right through middle U. Oh, and this is perfect, but he doesn't get great timing, so from behind, Beaster's going to be there. 2 versus 2. Petty in the middle window, going to get the one-on-one gunfight versus Vinny, and now it's a 1 versus 2 here for Mr. Toxic, who's all the way out towards the field, looking for the FGCU players who need to grab that bomb.
Florida Gulf Coast now have the positioning of Mr. Toxic. He's going to try to relocate through church, and no one on the chase. They're just trying to shoulder and maybe get any more information possibly suspecting that he went through church, but with no arrows turning just yet. They're trying to figure out where they want to work this bomb, and as these arrows turn and decisively start sprinting back to spawn, I can only guess that they're going to be rotating over to this B-bomb site. Will Mr. Toxic make the read, or does he not have enough information at the A site to leave it just yet? But with 25 seconds left, Florida Gulf Coast are going to quickly clear out P5 and Plat and try to get this bomb down. Mr. Toxic could get great timing, and with this stun check coming in, he might have an idea.
Gets nothing. Makes the wrap back over towards B. Could get some great timing here. Mr. Toxic in the top window. Doesn't spot Petty's leg, so he's going to get the bomb off, and now he's going to finally walk away with a kill. Still a 1 versus 1, but a beautiful trade there from FGCU is going to allow them to take their 3rd consecutive round. And that right there, Cash, was COD timing at its finest. You hop over the railing, you don't see anything, and Justin, who was playing the platform, just gets perfect timing onto Mr. Toxic as he sprints back up the staircase into radio. There's not much better you could have played that. That's a beautiful bait and switch in an immediate trade that sets them up for success.
Yeah, if only Mr. Toxic had seen his leg a little bit earlier, he may have been able to prevent the plant, but like you said, Justin in position to play the trade there. Florida take 3 quick rounds off the board. West Virginia need to find a way to look to respond, and they've tried getting aggressive through the mid-map, and that's been traded out, so Florida have been trading more effectively, and then when they find themselves in 1v odd situations, it's really the mid-round where we're seeing the collapse from them. So on offense, I'd like to see them get this bomb planted quickly if they could, but it's once again the Gulf Coast opening up with a first blood.
4 versus 2, a minute left on the clock. Ethan tries to make things a bit easier on the Mountaineers here. 0-4 start from Vinny. Unfortunate to say the least, but tipping on the opposite side, also starting out with an 0-2 stat line. So you've at least basically gone a 3 versus 3 here through the first couple of rounds of the search and destroy. However, bomb will go down today. 2 players versus 3, 40 seconds left.
Ethan could get wonderful information. The trigger discipline, you can only hope this pays off. Love seeing players exercise such great trigger discipline and pass that information along. Mr. Toxic in turn is able to draw it to a 2v2. So Ethan, with all the information, opens up this round for West Virginia to respond. I love it, and I hope that they can close this one out just based on the high IQ plays that they're trying to make.
1 versus 2 here from Petty. Gonna spot the one other towards the right side. Just doesn't have enough time to get back over towards the bomb and get the second kill at the same time. On the bus in the middle. Not gonna realize that he's there, but he's gonna get the information in the way of the shots. Petty will turn back around for 3 in a row. Sure, you don't win the round, but you still are on your way to potential streaks a little later down the line. Either way, finally on the board is West Virginia, as Florida Gulf Coast will waver just a bit after losing a 2 versus 3 in that round.
A good round for West Virginia. Again, those are the intangibles. You had spoke about intangibles coming into map number 2 from map number 1, and Ethan puts them on display there as well. Just that read to know, hey, I got 2 players on my sites. I can relay this to my teams. They can have free kills, walk right into their sites, and they capitalize. Now, again, they find themselves 2 rounds in the hole still. Beaster opens up with, once again, another first blood, but this time it is traded out. And so in a 3v3 situation, West Virginia on defense, trying to hold on to this A-side lane.
Hit over the top. Weaken up the player. Beaser. Looking to make his way just a bit forward. Syra will be the first one up to challenge. Will fall to the hands instantaneously. Vinny on the board for the first time here instead of the S&D. Unfortunately, though, not for long, as he'll die in the bottom of the church. Florida Gulf Coast, after wavering for a round, will go ahead and draw their hand right back on up. They put the hand on the 6-shooter and stuff it down the face of this West Virginia roster.
We'd worried if Florida, had maybe been worried about the search and destroy coming into it, knowing how West Virginia plays that so well, and then coming off of the Berlin hardpoint loss, how they're able to respond, still find themselves up 3 rounds, even with Tippin not having a kill in the map just yet. But for Florida, this is a great response from them to come out and put the lead on West Virginia that they have. It just shows the resilience of a team when they're able to bounce back like that. Again, it wasn't a brutal beating that they took in the hard point, but you go down 1-0 nonetheless and come out and take 4 rounds off of this West Virginia squad. So they've got to be feeling good, but Vinny with a route through the mid-map opens up this round and opens up this A site here for West Virginia.
Beaster forced to back all the way off. This allows West Virginia to start making their way through the map. You have the A site cleared out, but you could push all the way back through the fields, and that's exactly what they look like to be trying to do, but they will wrap back. So Bob going to go down towards this A site here. Stretch plant. Looking to the middle side. going to be a difficult retake here for Florida Gulf Coast. And as Vinny finds yet another one on to Beaster, you look to Tippin and Petty to try and clutch things up here. Petty, you just need to stay alive in a situation like this. It's already a 2 versus 4, difficult to combat, but you're also playing for these streaks.
Tippin getting any kill on the board would be huge here to try and help out in the round, but Vinny's going to rip one and get Petty off the board. Tippin now in a 1v2 situation, trying to make it happen. This would be a significant round if Tippin can pull it off, but I don't think he spotted him. He's just trying to go for it, but they got to check it.
Just playing that corner ever so softly, but yeah, it's one of those situations where you think maybe Tippin spots him towards the top window there, but unfortunately there for Florida Gulf Coast, you're not able to get the timing. Cyro in the top window with the MP40 will be able to clutch the round up. It was a 2 versus 4. Again, a very difficult situation to combat in, but that was the one player that you did not want to go down first in that situation. Tippin, sure, you get 2, maybe get some confidence going for yourselves, but they really don't amount to all that much. It just ends the round and, of course, gives the Mountaineers a 2-round gap now to get back to Florida Gulf Coast inside of this series. They're going to be met here with a player from West Virginia. You got to be careful, though. Tippin the first one in the door.
1v3 on P5. Little does Ethan know it, but when he can go flying up the staircase, he could find a couple of kills. Does just that. First 2 kills going the way of West Virginia, and that's actually just going to be a 4-for-1 trade over on P5, and we'll call that a round. West Virginia clawing back into this one now, find themselves down 1 round, and in the swing round, they're able to draw it at 4-3, so more and more confidence growing in this squad as they're chipping away at this lead. It's been 1 round win to 3 of West Virginia's here in the last 4. So Florida Gulf Coast still with advantage being up around and also just how they've been playing this S&D, but they've got to find a way just to slow down this West Virginia momentum.
4-3. You got to think for Florida Gulf Coast, this was the one opportunity that you had to take a strong map. You were up 4-1 at one point, and a beautiful stun over the top. Help with some shots too. Petty cleans up 1, so automatically you get 2 kills off the board. Very akin to what we saw when they were on their 4-round winning streak. Beaster looks back over towards that right side. Cyro does not want to challenge out just yet. You got to grab that bomb over towards the right side, but Beaster now is going to have some information on where that player might be playing from. Difficult gunfight to challenge if you are Cyro. You just want to back on off. Beaster continuously giving the angle there. 3 versus 2. You'd like to see maybe other people get into position to maybe find a quick trade there or at least push up the middle of the map, but they are going to at least hold their ground for a bit of time. 45 seconds left to take this bomb either towards the A or the B site.
And Ethan really has been chilling here, just trying to find any information, but Florida's just not giving anything up. Cyro finds a second kill, now drawing it at a 2v2, so Ethan is set up in a great position here to fly up these stairs and find a quick kill, and maybe could line up for 2 here, and does maybe, just about that, but wow. A great timed play from Ethan there to put them now in a 2v1 situation, bomb going down A.
And it's just so difficult, too, because if you're Florida Gulf Coast, you were in a great situation, but now it's Tippin in a 1v2. Shots are going to be there. Oh, but you gotta win the gunfight. 4-4 now. Tie game. The Thunderbirds were triumphant for the first couple of rounds, but once you let Ethan and the rest of the boys on West Virginia start to get a little bit of momentum, it gets scary. You can win 4 rounds, but we're not playing pubs here. It's 6 to win.
For Florida, it's so painstaking just to see rounds slip away, just little mistakes in each round that start costing you. Again, it's Cyro being able to find 2, and not like you had said, not being traded out effectively. You would have liked to have seen someone back Beaster up over on the top side of the map. They don't. That ends up allowing Cyro to put it to a 2v2 situation, now a 1v2, and it just started crumbling in the mid-round for them. West Virginia, again, that battle of attrition where they're just playing with the heart to get this done, to chip away at this. Now just needing 2 rounds and drawing it up at 4-4 to go up 2-0 in the series. Surely this is one Florida Gulf Coast doesn't want to let slip through their fingertips.
You would hope certainly not. But different things will happen. I think Cyro actually has the sniper round. He does. 6 in a row, looking for number 7. This would be for the streak, and I love actually how you pull the sniper out in this scenario. Tippin, going to be on a very difficult gunfight to manage, but with the pistol, he gets help from Vinny all the way from behind. Petty doesn't get the shots, and he gets turned on in the process. Oh, boy. Now it's a 5-4 lead at, not match point, but map point here for West Virginia, and you just got to think You can't be losing all these rounds.
Well,
It seems simple, Cash. It seems simple.
We're witnessing something. It's looking like a breakdown, but we still have a couple rounds to find out. But that's 2 1v1s. I even believe the last round, not this one, but the one before. I think Petty ran out of ammo both times. Oh my gosh!
Hey, Brady,
Syro
we'll see you
with
later.
the exclamation point on this search and destroy out here, quick scoping the heads off people.
Oh, well, you get that first kill. That was for the streaks, but in the process of that happening, you get too aggressive with the sniper. So, I mean, sure, if this goes to around 11, you'll have that sniper, or the glide bomb able to be used inside of that. But in this round, if you do want to close it out in a 6-4 win, you won't have a glide bomb at your disposal. And now it's a 2 versus 4 or 3, make it a 1 versus 3. Mr. Toxic was the one who got the bomb down, just sitting in the corner here, waiting for somebody to challenge around the corner. Justin's going to slide down all the way in the back by the platform. Coming through the back line of spawns, Tippin's going to be there. First one going to challenge. Justin going to be the second one. Mr. Toxic's going to push this. Justin's not going to expect it. Around the corner, you're going to be able to find it. Reload. Maybe just hold out the pistol. Petty around the corner. You pick up the MP40. Only 5 bullets, but you get it.
Gosh.
No glide bomb needed. Say goodbye. You're going to Cancun, Florida Gulf Coast University, West Virginia. They'll take this and D.
Man, when the Mountaineers decided to turn up, it is exciting to watch. What a way to close out the S&D. Opened it up with Syro taking the first blood, and then a 1v3. Mr. Toxic feeling toxic indeed. Just the nerve to challenge that gunfight on Justin to take the MP40 and just shimmy enough to find the kill. You said it a couple rounds in a row, but for Florida, you can't be losing those gunfights. They find a way to, and now they find themselves down 0-2 in the series.
I mean, unfortunately, we won't have the replay for you, but, you know, just breaking that last play down, you know, the first one comes around the corner. I love the play on the staircase right there because that's the least, you know, reasonable area you'd expect somebody to be in that situation, especially in a 1 versus 3 when you just are trying to play your life. So the fact that you're able to challenge the first one coming from the backside spawn, you get that kill. Justin gets weakened up by the automaton after the direct challenge after the fact. The player that was in top radio trying to come down from church didn't get there in time, and he never would have thought that you would have chased that kill all the way from behind. So when you walk around with that pistol, you're able to get Justin from the back paws. Then, of course, you pick up the MP40 and you're able to gun the last person with only 5 bullets in the magazine. That right there is phenomenal gameplay. That is good enough for a comeback from a 4-1 deficit for the Mountaineers. Oh boy. Cash, we are in for a treat with this series.
Well, we are. West Virginia setting themselves up to close the series out in a 3-0 fashion. I just, again, the way they were able to come back on that, we saw them with the ability in the series to take a lead and grow a lead and put themselves in a position to win just on the condition that, hey, we've done the hard work. And even if you try to come back, well, it's just not going to work out. There's just not going to be enough time left in the map to do that. We've seen them come back in the search and destroy, being down 4 rounds. So, you know, we've seen looks from the squad. Of course, it's just one series and just a couple of maps. But again, you can tell these Mountaineer players, they believe in each other, right? They have trust in one another and their ability to clutch up in situations. They've done just that. Now they find themselves up 2-0 in this series going into our Tuscan control. So again, it's paying off for them, and that's something you love to see because you can tell these guys are just working hard.
All right, so here's a couple things, right? Number one, for FGCU, I'm glad that they were able to beat Clemson and get to this point, and they are playing really, really well. The beginning of the search and destroy exemplified that. You know, the hard point, it was close, it was chaotic. They almost were able to complete the comeback. My biggest gripe here, though, is the fact that Florida Gulf Coast University was up 4-1 inside of that search and destroy and didn't manage to get a single round on the board after the fact and let the Mountaineers just walk all over them throughout the entirety of the search and destroy from that point on. That cannot happen in a playoff scenario. No. I don't care if you are without Captain Kirch anymore. I don't care if you're without your captain for your team, without a loud, strong voice. You cannot allow that to happen, especially when you allowed one of the players on the side of the Mountaineers to go ahead, not only find streaks, but with the sniper as well, get the snipe there. There was many rounds where Florida Gulf Coast had 3 versus 2, 4 versus 3s, many man advantages. They just didn't play aggressive enough on a bomb site and/or played trades with one another on the map that allowed the Mountaineers to get back into the game, and that is what cannot happen in the playoffs. It can't happen. Simple as that.
No, and again, the counter to that is, like you had said, they played so passively. They are in situations where they had the man advantage that West Virginia caught them off guard in showing aggression. I mean, we saw Ethan there in the 2v3 situation where, yeah, they peppered up the player that was sitting top church. Ethan goes flying bottom church just to try and get that kill really quick. And again, it catches them off guard. So West Virginia knowing when to change tempo and really get aggressive in their face, it's paid off for them here in this series.
Map number 3. West Virginia trying to close this series out in 3 quick maps back-to-back on Tuscan here. Florida Gulf Coast will be on the defensive side to start things off. Tipping the long-range shots will open things up. First blood on the board for the Thunderbirds. And as Ethan falls, it'll be a 3 versus 4 over towards that A point. You're just looking through the middle of the map to try and get some control right now. It's a 1-to-1 first break with Petty being able to trade that kill out instantaneously.
West Virginia find themselves on a early Beaser with a beautiful grenade. The tactical use in this Tuscan map that we've seen thus far through the search and destroy and now the control, it has been exciting. I love watching the different tactics coming in on this map and how players line up set pieces, but still trying to play his life and contest this A site. It's going to be Florida Gulf Coast, and they just aren't able to get too close. Mountaineers now just with a stack coming in, 2 ticks of progress now at this A site and closing in on the 3rd to make a rotation over to B. Florida Gulf Coast. Beaser on 4 is a good thing, but you're nearly about to lose this A site in turn.
Yeah, you're okay with that though, because you're up by 5 lives, now 4. Tippin's just going to challenge that aggressively all the way from the outside. He's just going to jump around the corner with the pistol. Somehow makes it work. Sayaro is going to be there to trade it out. So A zone going to be fully captured. Minute added to the clock. 2 minutes to work with in full. The totality of Florida Gulf Coast University set up across the map is there. And right now, the Mountaineers really just have not found a way to push up the map. Sure, you're going to start making your way through the north side, but that also requires the player in player number 1 to not only have success in the bottom of P5, but really, make that pinch happen and bring it to life.
Yeah, the pressure on Vinny to find these kills. As he's opened up with 1, Mr. Toxic finds the others. So far, so good for West Virginia on this transition over to B. They've got Florida Gulf Coast pinned deep in their spawn. If Vinny can find 1 more kill, again, really feels like a 1v3 for Vinny. Tippin does cut him down, and Beaster responds over at Church, but still an opening at P4. The Thunderbirds trying to turn their heads and try to respond and deal with the problem over here as now they clear out flat and top radio, but for West Virginia, it was a valiant attempt, just unfortunately couldn't find all the kills, and now you're back to square 1. A couple one-off lives trickle in, and you find yourself down 7 lives now.
Beaster up top. Shots on the Vinny. 18 versus 11. Defensive side having the advantage here inside of map number 3. First round gone the way of the Dirty Birds so far. Mr. Toxic, though, will jump down to the bottom of the point. You're going to try and go ahead and maybe at least get that extra tick of progress over at the B zone. Justin up top. Vinny looking to help out the rest of the team. Tippin going to be there, but from the right side, it is going to be a player for Florida Gulf Coast to trade that out. So you still got a few players trying to dance around the backside spawn. Up and towards the top of the plat, Sayaro is going to be there with the MP40. Petty over towards that B zone down below, but with 2 nice kills there. That allows the reinforcements to get up close. It also allows Beaster, though, to get in position in top radio. So now you've just focused everybody back around towards radio. This allows FGCU once again to set up towards the backside of the spawn, and now that just cuts everything that you try to get forward for yourselves negated. That play right there doesn't make much sense to me. It was almost just chasing red dots.
It really was. It forced Cyro to back up, and like you said, Beezer getting those kills in radio. Well, all Cyro was doing was staying alive and waiting for the push to come through, but Beezer was cutting that down in and over at P5. So like you had said, it just was a hit that ended up being null and void because, well, they just couldn't find the kills and were a little spun around. They did find an opening there on the B site momentarily, but it doesn't amount to much, not even to take a progression. Florida Gulf Coast hold on the B site and only allow West Virginia to get 3 ticks.
Yeah, 3.5 ticks there for West Virginia. So if there's any sort of indication on where this map is going, at least in the offensive front there, all Florida Gulf Coast needs to do here is get 4 ticks to negate that first round from the Mountaineers. You'd love to get an offensive round win, but that could be very daunting here on Tuscan, especially against a very good slaying team like West Virginia. Mr. Toxic had a great ending to the search and destroy. A rough start here for the control, which is really kind of unusual after a player pops off at the end of one map. However, as I say that, he'll find the first blood here in the round. Petty will fall at the same time, and all three players from Florida Gulf Coast who are over at A will get knocked off the board instantaneously. Player towards the top of the broken apartment building, and everybody now trades back on. So you have 3-3 on the opening break. Now it's Vinny, the last one alive here on the A zone. You're looking for number 5 in a row. That's going to be good for that. But really now it's all going to come down to B, sir, just taking that player out. So A zone and B zone getting worked on right now. This is going to split the defense 2-2.
And Florida Gulf Coast got aggressive through the mid-map. That ended up resulting in them giving up mid-map positioning, and now that allows for West Virginia to retake. But like you said, the B side also getting some love, and therefore going to turn the head of the Mountaineers players to try and, well, slow down any more progression, because they already have one tick at B, and if they can close this A site like you would expect them to, this can definitely spell trouble for West Virginia as the game continues to go on. But still lots of control left ahead of us, 60 seconds left, and now Florida Gulf Coast have a decision to make. They still have 2 players up at this B site, and Ethan is able to chop down Tippin, so really, they've got to make a decision here and start to get progress at one of these points and make some kind of commitment.
Ethan doesn't realize that Petty's in top radio, but Petty got some horrible timing as Ethan now is able to run rampant in the backside spawn. So you can create a pinch towards the bottom of the church here, but you still have the numbers up over at B, and you also have players over at A. So you have 2 ticks of progress in total right now. 1 at A, 1 at B, and you're still getting progress over at that A site. Vinny from the top, though, in church is going to be able to knock one down. Halfway through the tick completion over at that A zone. Tippin's going to be able to find one in the way of Automaton out over towards the field side. Vinny from U will get cut down by Tippin as well. So Mr. Toxic still at 4-12. Not a great game. Ethan tries to turn on Justin, but Justin back around the corner with the pistol will be able to win the gunfight. 4 lives separate the 2 teams. FGCU with the A zone captured now is going to be up in ticks overall with 4 compared to the 3.5 the Mountaineers had the last time, and with 1 minute and 40 seconds they have a 4 life advantage to try and get that B zone completed.
And this hit's going to be coming through P4, 3 players up, chopping down 2 for the Mountaineers, now working out of their spawn. But it's Florida Gulf Coast with all of the map presence right now, working on that second tick of progression, already halfway through it with just 1 player on it. And West Virginia just can't get close to the site. They're trying to figure out the approach they want to take, but Beezer cuts them down, and Tippin puts the nail in the coffin there. Now Cyro maybe with the potential to come in top radio and make the play, but they make the read and cut him down. So this tick just needing a couple seconds left. West Virginia no spawns, and well, it doesn't seem to matter at this point. It's just a matter of cutting that last player down. West Virginia, yeah, you hold on for a moment, but it's 2v11.
Minute 15, 2 versus 11. It would be a wild way to hold back Florida Gulf Coast University, but now in a 1 versus 11, Vinny up and towards the top of the church will get knocked down. So with 2 good rounds on a defense, now an offense, Florida Gulf Coast University, on this Tuscan control, are now at match point. They were able to go ahead and win this next defense. It would force us to a map number 4 once again here on Tuscan. For the Mountaineers, you got to be careful. You don't want to give Florida Gulf Coast University any sort of momentum going into the rest of the series, especially knowing that they just beat Clemson and can have the reverse sweep at their fingertips.
And just looking at the scoreboard, that kind of gives you the insight to the West Virginia team that we've seen in this control. Just slow performances, no one positive. I guess Cyro at 12-12 would be the closest, followed closely by Vinny. But again, Mr. Toxic had a good round and some good plays within one of the earlier rounds we had seen, but an overall slow game. So if that can turn around here, which we know Mr. Toxic very well can, that's something that they can look to build on as they try to draw this to a round number 5. A already captured, 2 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock. West Virginia wasting no time in this round number 3, and they are working through Church and P4 to try to get over to B.
You know, normally in respawns, you love to see engagements, but at the same time, not having engagements can actually help your team, especially in the life count. At Florida Gulf Coast, right now, Petty is only at 9-9, so with relatively low engagements comparatively to the Mountaineers side, it's no wonder why they've been ahead in the slaying, or rather the lives left remaining in multiple rounds here, succinctly in those first 2. You also look to Beezer. Brady's having a great game at 23-14. Justin at 20-14 now on 2 in a row. You look to the side of Florida Gulf Coast University to hold strong here on the defensive side, and that's not a team kill that you hoped for there, especially when you were trying to set yourselves up with the play over towards B and having that A zone already gone. That was the last thing on your mind there, but more importantly, that might have just lost you the game.
Very well could have. Right now, West Virginia unable to find a kill until Ethan opens it up there, but yeah, just some lack of coordination from the side of West Virginia on this offensive round. They got the A site with ease, as you would expect, but this transition over to B has not been clean from them. Justin blowing this game wide open at 23-14 on a 5 streak now. And if he gets streaks, I absolutely expect those to be called in to close this out. We'll have to see if he can even get there. But West Virginia, just on offense, they find themselves in this position with about 60 seconds left, unable to just make a decision and really 4-hit one lane. They try to spread their resources a bit too thin and hit through multiple lanes, as we see someone in P5, someone in Church Alley, and 2 players still coming up off spawn. Now you lose those 2 lives and it's back to square one. So for West Virginia, that's what's been costing them these offensive rounds, is just their inability to play with a little bit of patience and a little more decisiveness.
Look, at this point, down 7 lives, 30 seconds left. You have one more attempt at it. It might just be one of those times where you say GG, go next to Hardpoint here, back on the same map either way. Nay's going to be out towards Mr. Toxic. Petty and Beast are going to be there for 2, and that just completely stints everything that the Mountaineers had once again built up for themselves. And as everybody from the Mountaineers will fall, Florida Gulf Coast is trending towards the positives here in map number 3. They should be able to take this in a 3-0 fashion over the side of the Mountaineers, at least in map 3. Still down 0-2 in the series, but it will at least get their first map on the board. No time left for the Mountaineers to get across the map. The kills won't be there either. Florida Gulf Coast and the Thunderbirds, they're on the map. They're on point. Finally, a map inside of the series. It looked like it could have been the map 2 Search and Destroy. They got them there. But, you know, when backs on against the wall, and the playoffs are ramping up, gosh, it's the most important time to take a map.
It absolutely is, and a dominant control at that. Again, 6-21 for Mr. Toxic. That just isn't going to cut it. Same thing with Ethan at 15-21. You would have liked to see a little bit more productivity out of him, given how the Berlin Hardpoint played out and how well he performed there. But hey, you can't win every single map, and you can't win every single gunfight for the side of Florida Gulf Coast. You win enough of them to secure your 3-0 in the control and keep yourselves alive in this series. Now you're going to go back to another Tuscan respawn. So with how Florida ended this control, we're really going to have to see some resilience out of West Virginia, because though Gulf Coast are down 1-2 in the series, well, you come off hot off of a respawn, and wouldn't you know, you're going back to the same map in another respawn.
Statistics-wise, wasn't great map there for Mr. Toxic, doing his best tip and impression from map number 1. A 2-1 lead for the Mountaineers leaves us with a Florida Gulf Coast opportunity for a reverse sweep. Now, Cash, we'll talk a little bit more after a break, but any bit of cookies or information that you want to just sprinkle on here before we go to a break?
I really think Florida Gulf Coast need to capitalize on the momentum that they have coming out of this control and going into another Tuscan respawn. For me, how they open up this hard point is definitely going to be telling of if they have the ability to pull off this reverse sweep. So coming back into this, they need to ride the momentum that they have off map 3.
Playoff groups are the best time of the year in the CCL. I am so happy that we are getting to bring you yet another year of collegiate Call of Duty action for the playoffs. We'll take a quick intermission, step aside. When we come back, the Mountaineers try to close out Florida Gulf Coast in a 3-1 fashion on a Tuscan hardpoint. McCormiel, Cash will be back in just a minute. Oh, I love the CCL production team. They're like a family to me. Shout out Benji and Zenny. We're doing everything behind the scenes tonight. But Mountaineers, Florida Gulf Coast University, a 2-1 lead for West Virginia University. The Thunderbirds have a monumental task to overcome if they want to reverse sweep inside of the series. However, with that control win on Tuscan, that left a nice 3-0 taste in our mouths. We go now to a Tuscan hardpoint, where they look to do the exact same thing here in another respawn mode.
I do completely expect them to pick up where they left off. It would be, again, a tremendous act of resilience for West Virginia too. They still are up 2-1 in the series, of course, but again, just that momentum that carries over from map to map, let alone playing within the same map. I would say the advantage is definitely favoring Florida Gulf Coast, at least as we kick off this hard point. For West Virginia, they need to look to respond quickly and open up early the same way they did in that Berlin hard point, which was finding breaks early, getting substantial amounts of time, and whenever they did win rotation, they capitalized by getting 45-50 seconds of hill time. So if they can replicate what they did on map 1, they'll be just fine and close this series out here, but you've got to recognize that Florida Gulf Coast have a little bit of momentum coming off a 3-0 control.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to resurrect something for Florida Gulf Coast University from map number 1, it was a lackluster performance from the team as a whole. However, Justin had a pretty decent game inside of that first map. You'd like to see everybody else just be able to either match pace or just be able to have a few better strides as we look from the Tuscan control. But, I mean, on the opposite side, though, for the Mountaineers, the same thing could kind of be said about, you know, Mr. Toxic there, only getting, couple of kills there throughout the entirety of that game. It was not a a surprising, rather I should say it was a surprising game, but really not all that that flashy. So Mountaineers going to be able to contest it from the opposite side. Florida Gulf Coast will be able to get the first couple of points on the board. However, the kills aren't going their way just yet. They're going to stay down around the corner. Mr. Toxic going to be peeking and challenging around the corner. However, it's a 3-to-1 trade. Florida Gulf Coast will be back over towards the field side and then back in P1.
Cyro in this mid-map already across, getting information that 2 players just went in bottom church, so we see this pinch play coming in. Cyro was able to find 1. They're just looking for 1 more in and around P4 here before they look to make this rotation over to P2, but 18 seconds of time cleanly going the way of Florida Gulf Coast. It is going to be West Virginia that end up going for scrap time and maybe getting a little overzealous, as they're going to flip out and Florida Gulf Coast are going to be gifted P2 spawns. So not only do you find yourselves up 20 points after P1, which not a substantial amount of time, but given that P1s are generally scrappy, that is a decent bit amount of time to take. So now you find yourselves gifted P2 spawns, and you can open up here with the first 5 to 10 seconds of time cleanly. West Virginia, once again, need to try to find a way to break into this early like they were able to do in Berlin.
Shots to the top there. Not going to be able to connect, but Petty will go ahead for 2. Tippin with 1, a 3-to-2 trade back and forth. Florida Gulf Coast University have themselves a nice bit of a lead, but just as quickly as that lead starts to grow, it evaporates instantaneously as players from Florida Gulf Coast will fall. Beaster will jump on down and towards the point. Didn't realize that one slipped the knot all the way up and towards the top of the platform. Almost able to gun that player off of it, but Vinny will win the gunfight. So Petty now making his way through the church. 20 seconds of time left here. If you're Florida Gulf Coast, you're okay with giving up this time, especially how much you can net over on P3.
They won't even draw this game even at a tie if they get the rest of the time cleanly, which they are not going to now. Only going to get about 10 seconds of time, but you also chop Vinny off of Streaks, who is on a 4, so a clean rotation over to P3. You'll have a couple of gunfights to hold off initially, but player 2 and Justin playing cutoff at P5. They should find a couple freebies here.
Trying to sneak down the staircase. Beaster will get the information that one's coming from the top of the fire staircase. However, Ethan will get the best of the one-on-one gunfight. 45 seconds left on this hill. 15 seconds have knocked off the clock. You're going to be able to get the player off of that back head glitch. Petty going to be the first one up to challenge. Vinny in the hill. Everybody winning gunfights on the Mountaineers now. And finally, the kill feed will go white for the first time as Tippin's able to find 1, but it's not for long. They got him in a spawn trap all the way in that back left corner. All you have to do here is hold your head glitches and make sure you win your gunfights from the front. You just got to be careful, though, for player number 3 as Tippin is trying to make a flank route through the middle of the map.
Tippin's able to find 1, and that opens this up. Cyro tries through fire stairs to find another, but Florida Gulf Coast, it was looking dicey for a second, but they were able to break back in. West Virginia all but secure themselves here with one last gunfight. The ability to get scrap time, that is not the case. Tippin goes for it, and that gives West Virginia rotation over to P4. Player 1 and Beezer has a big job to play in staying alive here as teammates come over on rotation, but Ethan will sniff that out, and once again, West Virginia, they have the rotation. We've seen them hold on to significant amounts of time now, being down 10 points. If they can hold off this first wave, they'll find themselves getting their first bit of significant time here in this hard point.
You know, Ethan's had a pretty good series so far, so hopefully he'll play along with the joke here. But, 2-10 is not the greatest way to start off a map where you can still continuously close out the series, especially a game that you need to go ahead and win, so you don't get to that coveted Game 5 and give FGCU even more momentum. However, you're still tied at 61 apiece with Mr. Toxic, who wasn't performing well at the beginning of this game either, and Ethan, who was at 1-9 at one point. So for Florida Gulf Coast University, yeah, sure, you're getting a good amount of kills. The slaying is there, but the problem with that is, of course, it's not netting you a lot of hill time. And with the Mountaineers being able to take their first lead of the game since the very opening moments of this hard point, it's looking good for them to not only start to make a little bit of a push forward, but maybe even hold on to P5 as you see Mr. Toxic win the first gunfight on the rotation.
As you'd mentioned, Florida Gulf Coast netting somewhat empty kills, Justin at 12-9, and we know how crucial he is as just a roaming slayer, but with 1 second of hill time, and knowing how close this game is going to be, would like to see him find a way to get a little bit more time. But Cyro is unable to find a single kill, and that grants Florida Gulf Coast permission to flood right into P5.
If he would have at least got 1, that would have been completely fine for me. It's just the problem that you make that flank route, you give away your position, and you pepper everybody up, but your teammates, don't get the trades there, and you can't even finish a single kill there. I mean, it's a difficult gunfight. I get it, but it's 3 of them that all lined up for you. That's just, it's just such a difficult thing. But the good news is, You net yourself a good amount of hard point time here. You're there for the scraps. And now if you're the Mountaineers, you have player number 6 and Ethan actually starting to make a route out through the middle of the map. You got to be careful, though. Beaster on the right side. You still got Tip in the middle as well, but Petty will fall. Somehow you get across the map, and I don't know if I like that challenge necessarily directly up the map, but Sayar was there for a trade, so you're going to be able to get yourselves over to P1. So you hold the scrap time on P5, you get the P1, now you can hold them from the left side of the map.
And Cyro is having not only a map, but a series at 21 and 10. Playing very well for the Mountaineers squad, and over on the side of Florida Gulf Coast, Petty with a slower performance. Looking back at West Virginia, Mr. Toxic was already over double the kills he had in the control, so a much better performance to start this hard point off as we kick off the second set of rotations. And like you said, West Virginia, they were holding the hard point from that right-hand side of the map. I'd like to see them not get overzealous to the mid-map and end up getting flipped out for P2. They have had a harder time breaking back into hills once they lose them, but they're still holding P1 from the less than favorable side and extending the lead out to 50 points. So all around for West Virginia, this is a win.
You look at the rotations yet again, but this time it's the Mountaineers who were set up. It's the second rotation. Florida Gulf Coast on the first set was able to go ahead, break early, and then be able to get about the first 10, maybe 15 seconds of time. The Mountaineers broke in after the fact. They went all the way around to the backside spawns. And that was Tippin is going to slide into the hill. He's going to be able to get the shots in the back on one. Finally finishes up the kill. So it's a 3 straight kill feed of all white for Florida Gulf Coast. Now through the back, Vinny's going to try and win the one-on-one versus Petty, but Petty will get the best of him there. It's going to be a trade all the way back around, or at least an attempt at it. Ethan will find the kill onto Petty. Mr. Toxic now down the ramp side staircase, and you look to Tippin, who's inside of the hard point. West Virginia have done a great job at throwing bodies at this hill consistently. The problem is they haven't won the amount of gunfights they need to go ahead and hold it. And as a 4-1 trade comes through, the Mountaineers will be on the outside looking in, and now we're going to have to try and sprint across the map to get themselves set up for P3, let alone even fight for the scraps of P2.
And they almost need to fight for the scraps of P2, because with the last 20 seconds here, Florida Gulf Coast can tie this game once again and have rotation, at least the advantage heading over to P3. So like you had said, they have to work across the map and maybe give the scrap time one last look. If they're able to do that, that'll just give them a little more of a buffer. But with 2 players already over at P2, P3, it's going to be a 2v2 on the site for this early P3 control.
You think it's a free kill through the middle of the map. Mr. Toxic gets all the way into the back, and this is what I was afraid of for Florida Gulf Coast. The last time you rotated out early to P3, you couldn't hold on to it, even at the early stages. The Mountaineers don't even let Florida Gulf Coast get the initial P3 time here. They're already broken all the way into the back, and now Vinny's on 5 in a row. Sayaro's on 3 in a row. Now make that number 4 as he cuts Petty down from across the map. He'll find a 5th one up and towards the top. Vinny now going to be on number 6, so one more will be the final number 7 for the glide bomb, and then streaks for West Virginia would be so crucial here towards the end of the game. Tippin will finally cut down Vinny, so no streaks on the board here for West Virginia. However, 40 seconds of time went their way. Florida Gulf Coast, yeah, you broke in, but the damage is already done. You're down by 50 again.
It's the same situation we saw them in map number 1, where they're able to chip away at the deficit, but whenever West Virginia can get a substantial hold by winning rotations, they just continue to stretch and extend that lead out. Now 20 points from 200, and again, down 50 points. Like you had said, they need a quick break here on P4, let alone winning the rotation. They look to do that as the hill pops, as 3 goes down, but Florida Gulf Coast, this is their big chance to respond. Can they do and prevent what happened in the search and destroy by finding a way to close out this map here after coming back from a deficit?
Well, there was one player on 6 in a row, but that was for the side of the West Virginia Mountaineers. This time it's Justin who's trying to put the team on his back yet again. Unfortunately, he won't be able to find number 7, so no glide bomb for Florida Gulf Coast University. 4 in a row, though, for Beaster. Multiple players streaking on each side of things. Now from the top of the chart, you go for number 5. 25 seconds left, only down by 20 points. This has been a huge hold here in the bottom of the church for Florida Gulf Coast. The Mountaineers have had no contestation time on this hill, let alone being even able to think about pushing up past that half portion of the map. They've just opted to rotate completely over towards P5. If you get the last second of scrap time here, Florida Gulf Coast is going to have themselves the lead.
And as we go over to P5, again, momentum starting to build for this Thunderbird squad, as now they can fly over West Virginia. They've put all of their marbles, all of their eggs in one basket, as they have opted to roll the dice over on P5 and are going to try to hold on to this initial wave of Florida Gulf Coast players. And, well, as they hop in here, it goes 2 for 1 in the kill feed, and they hold on for the time being. But with spawns coming in on roof, this could play a huge spoiler.
He's going to fly in. Justin tries to get around the right side corner. Petty's going to be there for number 1. Make it 2. You get in for the break. Down from below. You're going to be able to find 1 in a teammate. Now, it's all going to be on the Spyro. First kill. There onto Petty. You look for the second. Nobody in the hill just yet. You're finally going to go ahead and touch it. Contest time now in. Justin, Beeser, pair for two. You look back to the front side of the hill. It's going to be Beeser for yet another, and Petty with the final nail in the coffin there to knock everybody back to the spawn side of the Mountaineers. 197. We lead switch yet again. And the Mountaineers, yes, they're rotated on over towards the next point, but Florida Gulf Coast did a phenomenal job of being able to break into P5.
They were down 50 points after P3 and now have found themselves in a near 70-80 point swing after the last two hills. West Virginia have only been able to find about 30 to 40 some odd points. Now on P1, Florida Gulf Coast are once again in firm control. Player 7 and Mr. Toxic have played a big timing role here in finding these kills, but it's Justin who finds one in the mid-map and Petty in the back who are able to collect and continue earning this time. Just needing 20 seconds. West Virginia, they have to fly this hill. They only have a couple more chances.
15 seconds for Florida Gulf Coast to send this to a map number 5. The Mountaineers are going to be pushing over through the field side. You're going to be able to break on in, but it's a 3-to-1 trade. Ethan might have just saved it for the time. 13 seconds left. You can still win it off a P1, but you got to break on back in. You also have to start thinking about the rotation. The Mountaineers won it the last time. They were able to get a ton of time over on P2. It was a P3 rotation that killed them initially, but now it's a one-on-one gunfight out towards P5. Player number 8 off screen is going to win it. Cyro goes for the second. Tippin's going to be there, trying to dip, dodge, and dive. You see the player on the staircase, you're going to be able to win the gunfight. So now it's a rotation, 237, 217.
And how often do we see teams who are in the driver's seat start to collapse whenever they have to get a break in order to win? West Virginia have drawn this now within 12 points. And player 2 and Justin is trying to make something happen. And alley streaks are going to get called in and not connect. But it's Florida Gulf Coast who need to find a way to break in. West Virginia, they're holding on.
Cyro gonna be able to find the first. Petty and Baser gonna jump on down in towards the point. Mr. Toxic has to go big. You find the first, but no trades are there immediately. Oh, but from the church, the backside, the flank's gonna be there. Justin goes big for 2. 6 seconds. Cyro, you have to flank on in. You're gonna be able to find the first one. They stack up together. You gotta touch the point if you're the Mountaineers. Florida Gulf Coast University come back from a 70-point deficit, force a map number 5. If you don't believe in Cinderella stories, well, I guess the shoe fits for Florida Gulf Coast.
What looked dire at some points here in this hard point for Florida Gulf Coast. They are able to piece together the things we had said that they need to improve on going into this hard point. Where in the first hard point, it was too much of a deficit to come back from, where in the search and destroy, they had the lead and had lost it. All of it comes together in succession for this map number 4. They come back from a deficit. They stay cool, calm, and collected when they had a lead and didn't lose it whenever West Virginia tried to make a stand. They win by just over 20 points here and force us, as you had said, Corn, to a map number 5. Reverse sweep very much in the cards and on the table for the Thunderbird squad.
Cash, it is a Tuesday night, and I am sweating in my own bedroom, screaming over video games because this has been a phenomenal series. Florida Gulf Coast, tip yourselves with a pat on the back. 2 straight maps on Tuscan, a control and a hard point to tie things up at 2 apiece. They theoretically should have won map number 2 as well. That could have very easily been the final map inside of this best of 5 series, but Florida Gulf Coast, they have done the impossible, the unthinkable in this series thus far. It didn't look like they were the better hardpoint team in map 1. They resurrect that in map number 4. As Cash and I talked about, it is very easy to get a team with momentum going, and that's exactly what the side of the Thunderbirds were able to do. So now, we split the maps at 2-2 directly down the middle. Will it be Florida Gulf Coast who are able to take a search and destroy on a Bacage to complete the reverse sweep and start their playoff quest with a 1-0 lead over their opponents? Or will it be the Mountaineers who will be able to resurrect what they had in the first 2 maps and close out with a second search and destroy in the series? This is where we find out who has the ice, unlike Trae Young.
There it is. I knew you were going to hit a lick tonight, and you ended up finding the spot.
Smoking that Trae pack.
Typical from your Corn. But really, Florida Gulf Coast, they have the opportunity to close the series out with the reverse sweep, of course, on the table. Again, riding on momentum, as we have alluded to so many times this series, that is just so huge whenever now you have won 2 back-to-back maps, the control in a dominant fashion, and the hard point down to the wire, just one that really gasses you up mentally and just gets you excited for the rest of the series. West Virginia, ball is in your court to respond. Like you said, you have to resurrect what you did initially in the first 2 maps, and looking at the search and destroy, I couldn't even say, because like in Florida, like you had said, they had an opportunity to take that map 2, potentially but they didn't. And West Virginia showed tremendous resilience coming back from being down 4 rounds. So really anything could happen here, and I wouldn't be shocked. But recency bias has to say Florida Gulf Coast just have a touch more momentum at the moment.
I feel like this is an important time to remind everybody at home. This is not a bracket matchup just yet. The way the playoffs work this time around inside of this season of the CCL is we have playoff groups. There's 32 teams in 8 different groups across 2 different regions inside of the CCL. This is one group, one match out of one group inside of the East region. This is Group F. Right now, Florida Gulf Coast, they are just trying to make it out of pools. The same thing with the Mountaineers. Every game against their opponents over the course of these next 2 weeks is going to be so influential because they might not make it out of their pools. So it's 2 LCQ teams, 2 teams that auto-qualified from the playoffs. Florida Gulf Coast being the LCQ team. The Mountaineers qualified throughout their Tier 1 stint. It's go time here on Bacage. Game number 5. One of these teams will start off their quest for CCL playoff fandom inside with a 1-0 lead. Who will it be? Mountaineers or the Thunderbirds?
Very slow opening round here, but Cyro able to open up with the first blood over at gate and really just trying to get control of this A site. No one making any crazy adjustments yet for Florida Gulf Coast. Still have Petty playing deep on River, trying to look for anyone making crosses, but still relatively passive from West Virginia, trying to watch the flank that isn't coming, but they get the bomb laid, and that's going to serve to aid them in this round. Beeser draws it up 3-3, but you've only got 30 seconds to work with.
I'm just sitting inside the building right now. If you're Florida Gulf Coast, you got to start making your move. Breaks out the doorway. Mr. Toxic just sitting in the corner. Beaster opens things up. Tipping's going to be able to spot out one. Behind him, the shots are going to be there. Mr. Toxic now spotted out all the way from the middle of the map. You turn around, Petty almost pre-fires the shots oh so perfectly. But if you're Florida Gulf Coast, you're happy with it because you walk away with a first round win there. Diffuse comes through. Florida Gulf Coast in a game number 5 will find that first round. They clutch up in the 3 versus 3 after the bomb goes down.
A good opening round from them to once again kick off another search and destroy, but I'm not going to get too excited too early here. We have seen some crazy things in the series tonight, let alone from this Florida Gulf Coast squad. So West Virginia now get a crack at defense to see how they want to play around what Florida Gulf Coast throws at them. And what we've seen with the A site change, B getting a couple more looks than it usually would. A can be a tricky one to break open, but for the time being, Florida Gulf Coast, they look to be going this way, and a pretty standard setup here for defense for the Mountaineers.
Interesting offensive split, but I get that you don't want to have anybody start to make that flank around through the backside of you, the Mountaineers, rather. Slow and steady, but Pacer, beautiful shots into the top of the grandma house of the A-bomb site. First blood on the board. 4 versus 3. Beeser, yet another one. That's 4-0 start here for Florida Gulf Coast University, but Beeser, more importantly, has been the catalyst for the first round, now potentially a second. Cyro just going to lay down inside of the kitchen. Beeser doing the exact same thing, though. Might be able to get some great timing. Bomb still down, 40 seconds to work with.
I'll even go on a limb here and say that Beeser, one, going for the ace within this round, has 75% of at least the S&D we've seen thus far, including map number 2, has 75% of the first bloods. Beeser does a great job as an AR, getting himself in positions to find players on crosses, to get to the places first to win those first blood engagements, and does just that. It's one thing to get to the position to win a first blood. It's another thing to actually win the gunfight, and Beeser has been doing that all night long in and out of the search and destroy, now being rewarded for it on a 5 streak. And I expect the team to play around this and really try to bait for a kill here, because streaks on Bacage, especially in a search and destroy, at the very least information, but can also open up a bomb site.
Slowly working your way up the map on an offensive push here. West Virginia is taking about 20 seconds off the clock, just holding their left triggers, waiting for anybody from Florida Gulf Coast to throw a shoulder. But nobody wants to do that just yet, but for good reason. Vinny looks to the back. Beeser almost gets his head taken off and or spotted by Vinny, but he can start making his way up the map, and a beautiful nade over the top is going to take down Justin. So you have yet to find Beeser. 3 versus 4, 50 seconds left. Try and make a move to the MAC, and there goes.
a must-win kill for Vinny there to get that A-bomb site. Now, it makes the retake that much harder for Florida Gulf Coast because they no longer have their spawn to work through with confidence. Players 1 and 2 just sitting across from each other and really just holding pre-aims, waiting for someone to cross their line of sight, tipping with the opportunity to make a play in the back. But in a 1v3 situation, yeah, you're able to get shots into one, but, oh, well, it's going to be the player jumping in behind you and cleaning up that kill. So West Virginia, a slow and steady offensive round, but they take it and they are able to strike before having 4 rounds put down on them. It's 1-2.
As Cash said there, you don't want to get to that coveted 4th round there for Florida Gulf Coast, because once you got out there, again, it felt like we were playing pubs back in the day where it only goes up to 4 rounds, and they thought that it was over, and then the Mountaineers just decided they wanted to get some momentum swinging in their favor, and they were able to bring back the map. However, Florida Gulf Coast has proven to be the better search and destroy team through the early portions of games. Now, does that change when adjustments come around from West Virginia? Well, at least in map number 2, that proved to be the answer. Beeser, first gunfight, going to take it over the top. Shots are going to go there, but they're not going to be able to connect for either kill, so it's still a 4 versus 4. However, Tippin with a beautiful nade over the top is going to be able to connect with the player that was on the top of the tank, and now Justin might be able to get some information on the player up top, but the doors are open, rather the windows are open, so you at least know that somebody's playing in the top of Grandma's.
Beaster finds a wonderful kill on Ethan and still trying to work for this A site and just having 1 player left, player 2, and Vinny trying to work through gate and is able to find 2 massive kills. Bomb goes down outside of Grandma's. This allows Cyro to try and make a play in and around Zig. And this has just completely turned the round on its head. Those 2 kills from Vinny cannot express how important those were. Cyro does his job and is able to find the person who collects the bomb in Justin. And now, in a 1v2 situation, Petty still trying to work out of spawn and really with no information on where these players are, has to collect the bomb and get it planted in 30 seconds.
Oh, he spots Cyro down towards the bottom of the middle. Petty's going to be able to find the first one. He's been so good coming into this roster for Florida Gulf Coast University. You jump out towards the left, almost able to get the shots off, but it's West Virginia who tie things up at 2-2 overall here in game number 5. But Cash, it's another one of those situations where FGCU had the win condition right in front of them, and they just threw it away again.
That's been their search and destroy demise. It's just, again, there's no better way to frame it up than that. You have the man advantage, you have the round, or whatever the case may be, and you still find a way to end up throwing it away there. You let Vinny find 2 in mid-map, unable to collect the bomb and get it planted, and really just slow approaches on offense as well. They're not putting any pressure on West Virginia on defense to have to make a play in response. Petty opens up the first blood here, which is a good way to go on defense. Justin finds a second. So, again, a round where they have the life advantage, but they've got to hold on to it and close it out.
You just hope that they don't throw this again. That's a double stun there out onto Ethan. Ethan's going to be forced to back off all the way. Door going to get broken open. One-on-one gunfight that you have to win there if you're Justin, but you get some help from the top there if you aren't Ethan, in the way of Mr. Toxic, who's up in the top of the barn. Petty, though, does know and have the information that both of those players are pushing towards that backside of the map. Right now, if you're Florida Gulf Coast, you can play passive, but you don't want to get over-aggressive. That's a beautiful challenge there to Beaster to move from cover to cover. Now Ethan is forced to recuperate by himself in a 1 versus 3.
Collects the bomb and takes off to Grandma's, just trying to find anywhere this player might be. He's able to get eyes on Beaster, but that is going to be location disclosed. And a player in position to play the trade for Florida Gulf Coast. Now they go up 3-2. Take a defensive round that they needed to there. But back on offense, they've got to find a way to get that bomb down quickly and, again, put the pressure on West Virginia to have to make a play.
Good response. Nice answer from Florida Gulf Coast there. But they need to do that 3 more times if they want to be able to find themselves a map number 5 win and complete the reverse sweep. 7-3 from Beaster here thus far inside of the search and destroy. You look to Beaster maybe to challenge that back tank yet again. Mr. Toxic was almost able to win it the last time. Beaster is going to spot him there, but it's going to be pretty much more of the same. Double nade over the top, though. Might be able to cut off Mr. Toxic, but he makes a great play. Hops off the tank all the way in the back. But now it's Justin, who's just trying to play the double doors here. Knows that Cyro was playing it the last few rounds. Might be able to predict it yet again. Tries to get aim assist there by getting the right stick and try to crack across the wall. If only he knew he was right there.
But it's Vinny once again who could play spoiler up at gate.
Oh,
Justin gets a little overzealous and a little impatient. Cyro's patience is rewarded with the opening kill in the round, and now Vinny able to respond with the trade, a 3v3 situation. Florida Gulf Coast once again not in a position to get this bomb laid down. Granted, you don't have any kind of map positioning or ability to get site control at this point, but It's just one where if they have that and capitalize after finding a trade or a first blood, then they can get that bomb laid. But really, it was Cyro who kind of cut down that mid-map attack coming in from Florida Gulf Coast.
Tipping in a 1 versus 2. Oh, he might get some great timing inside of the bottom of the kitchen, but isn't able to get the player who's mounted up on the back of P3. So we go 3-3 here overall. 6 rounds played out inside of the Bacage Search and Destroy. Florida Gulf Coast, there's been some good plays and there's been some bad plays. Majority of the bad plays have been when they have the life advantage and they get a bit overzealous and they want to start pushing out the map instead of just holding the left triggers like you need to do here on Bacage and just wait for players to come start to push up the map. That's plain and simple what you have to do when you have the numbers advantage, especially on defense. Offense there, you can cut a little bit of slack. Petty in a 1 versus, or rather Tippin in a 1 versus 3. It's not going to be 1 most of the time, but it is going to be stuns and nades over the top, trying to find that first player on the back of the tank. Beasts are forced to back off of the challenge, won't be able to challenge the player who's pushed up on the tank. This is allowing the side of the Mountaineers to play very aggressive over towards this A site, and I love this adjustment coming out of them. But a Tippin nade over the top is going to cut down the bomb carrier, and now they know where at least one player is going to be. They should have got the audio cue for the bomb as well.
A great grenade, and really, if West Virginia can still find a way to win this round, that would be crazy. Florida, with, again, like you had said, allowing West Virginia to get really aggressive in and through that site, have to find a way to try and respond now that they find themselves down 4-2. Tippin finding kills around the map. They just need 1 more in order to get this defuse. But, man, for West Virginia, I was about to say they really should get rewarded for that aggression and getting that bomb planted quickly. An unfortunate grenade puts them down in the life count early. Florida Gulf Coast, we're going blow for blow here, man. It's 4-3 now, and definitely a different looking search and destroy given, even just looking at the stats, right? Everyone has a couple of kills on the board at the very least. No goose egg watch, nothing like that. Everyone trying to put in their best effort here in this game 5.
I mean, with how West Virginia had knocked FGCU off of those power positions, mainly that back tank, they played that perfectly for a retake because they back far enough off to where Justin could land that nade directly on the site, cut down one player, and then all of a sudden you knew that the bomb was down. Obviously, they go ahead and they plant it, and then you can go ahead and just win those one-on-one gunfights back around the map. It was the flawless map, and round there from Florida Gulf Coast University, you look to do that again. I love the stun to the double doors there this time. Cyro can't play in towards the left side corner that Justin got so caught down from beforehand, but now as Tippin looks to the top, and everybody else from Florida Gulf Coast is just trying to pepper up that middle building. You look over towards that right side where Justin's trying to win the one-on-one gunfight for the first blood in the round.
And look at how far Florida Gulf Coast have backed up due to West Virginia just putting a little bit more pressure in the mid-map. They also back off. But again, this has been the kryptonite for Florida Gulf Coast. They have not been able to get any kind of site clearance. They make maybe a halfway commitment towards mid-map and try to see if they can find an opening. But when you lose a first blood, now you have to fight out of your spawn for, I guess a second time. And no information on where anyone is. You've got to find a pick before you can work any of these sites. B, obviously not getting any love anytime soon in this book. Search and destroy, and 2 players trying to work up towards this A site, but it's West Virginia, the Mountaineers. They've got all of these lanes locked down. Everyone just holding pre-aims.
The top, Justin goes for the overzealous gunfight, almost was able to win it, didn't even take any damage. But as Vinny backs all the way off, now Petty can lay down over by the bomb. You're going to try and get it down, but Sayaro from inside is going to be able to actually cut that player down who was on the bomb. Tippin though for a trade. 12 seconds left. You got to win this gunfight if you're Justin. You got to slide around the corner. Sayaro's going to be able to win it. 1 versus 3 here from Tippin. You won't be able to find it. Sayaro is going to be able to find another in the round. So the Mountaineers will tie things up at 4 apiece. And as we have traded the last, 5 rounds between these two teams with a couple of handshakes and pats on the back, this is turning into a classic series. 2 rounds needed for either team.
And for Florida Gulf Coast, it's pulling off the reverse sweep after taking maps 3 and 4, Tuscan Control and Hardpoint. For West Virginia, you are trying to halt the momentum, this train that has been rolling for the side of the Thunderbirds, by winning in game number 5 and shutting down the Cinderella story that we are seeing blossom before our eyes. They found more offensive success at times, but as you said, handshakes back and forth, no one able to get any substantial amount of footing in the rounds to extend any kind of lead, but the stun checks come in, and that just changes West Virginia's thinking about this site.
And that nade actually got Ethan down to 16 HP, so it was almost another beautiful nade over the top that would have actually resurrected everything that Florida Gulf Coast would have had by playing a passive defense. But the Mountaineers this time, they're rewarded with the first blood for playing aggressive, for getting that bomb down over towards A. Petty, you need to make this route quick because you only have 35 seconds to get all of these kills and actually find the defuse to go along with it. Beaster, though, is going to be able to find the first one. Now Beaster gets the second here in the round. This changes everything. 3 versus 2. 25 seconds left. Petty all the way in the back lines is going to spot Syro, who's actually trying to make a flank to shut things down. Vinny inside of the bomb site looks back. Justin, the first one around the corner. There's one on the bomb. You got to chase the kill. You have to chase the kill. Vinny will find the second. 1 versus 3. 10 seconds left. Nobody's going to be able to touch the bomb here. Vinny pulls it off. An incredible round. Florida Gulf Coast, unfortunate not to get back there, but will put West Virginia now on match in series point 5-4. Winnie in the chat.
And this is what we've seen for Florida Gulf Coast. They continue collapsing in these moments where they have no right to be losing rounds. Yeah, West Virginia has the bomb down, and as you said, you have to chase that kill, but you have 3 players. No, there's no reason no one should not be in a position to play a trade. Again, Vinny, of course, with excellent trigger discipline, not killing the player that was hovering around bomb, overlooking the diffuser, waits just a couple seconds, then goes for that kill, repositions beautifully just to put Florida Gulf Coast in a spiral. But now, match point. Mountaineers, are they the Cinderella Slayers? Are they going to stop this reverse sweep in its tracks and getting aggressive over this A site? They might be doing just that.
How do you let Beaster get away from that? And now FGCU goes ahead and finds themselves the first blood. Beaster will slide around the corner. Vinny in the middle of the map, trying to find another blood here for the side of West Virginia. Hopping up to the top of the church. They might not expect this, but they will. Tippin, beautiful read there on Vinny. 3 versus 2. You have yet to bring the bomb either towards the A or the B site, but it's trending over towards this A site for now. Ethan towards the top. Beaster will read it out, gets the information. 11-6 from Beaster, 10-7 for Tippin. Beautiful performances, but it's the plays like that from Vinny that ice things up. It was a 1 versus 3. 40 seconds left. You got to get the bomb down somewhere.
And Florida Gulf Coast have yet to show that they have any willingness to get the bomb down. That's been my biggest problem with them, is that they've had site control for majority of this round. I mean, you go even in the trades after the first bloods, but now you just crumble.
Not like this.
Around having to get the bomb planted. And once again, you aren't getting it down. West Virginia. I mean...
It was a 3 versus 2.
Yeah.
Beaster gets over aggressive, tries to hop up to the top grandma window for challenge, and he doesn't get the gunfight win, puts himself out of position, and it's a 2 versus 3. Another clutch from West Virginia. Florida Gulf Coast had it in their back pocket, but somehow, some way, still can't get past 4-round wins in the Search and Destroy. It was a beautiful performance there from Beaster and Tippin. You have to tip it to those two. But lackluster performance from Justin, who had been phenomenal all series, and Petty at 5 and 7 didn't pen great either. I mean, across the board, it was almost a completely even game. It literally was those 2 extra kills for Ethan that separated these 2 teams and him from Petty, and that is why they were able to win some of those rounds. First and foremost, a 1 versus 3 from Vinny can't happen. I mean, lose a 1v3 than a 2v3.
It's nothing different than what I saw in the first Search and Destroy. Florida Gulf Coast in situations. I mean, I can count on all my fingers and toes how many times you said, yeah, another gunfight, Florida has to win. Another. Yeah, they were just losing gunfights and losing man situations that they had, like you said, in their back pocket. They do enough in the response, they draw it to a map number 5, but they just find themselves collapsing within rounds, having the man advantage. I mean, I know I watched the whole map, but just trying to figure out where things went wrong for them. They just played on offense. It was a bit too passive. I mean, how many times did they, even if they traded out the first bloods and it was 3-3, they were all tucked in their spawn. They weren't playing from map positioning to get information. So even if they found themselves the man advantage, they had no clue. If it was a 3v2, they had no clue where the other 2 players were. That allowed them to run around and make picks. They just weren't watching flanks. Not that West Virginia was really trying to hit those routes, but they did a couple of times. But for Florida, you were finding kills and you were drawing things even when you had the man advantage. It was just amounting to no substantial information, and therefore you were just losing 3v2s because you had no information or awareness around the map.
I don't think I could have said that much better, Cash, honestly. That right there is a prime example of how not to play the final rounds of a Search and Destroy. But you have to tip it to West Virginia. The Mountaineers did a phenomenal job. of not only orchestrating the win inside of map 2, but doing the same thing there and clutching up with the ice. We'll look at the map set overall one more time just to see how we got to that final game, number 5, and of course, how things went down. Map number 1, 250-212. FGCU were down by about 100 points inside of that map. They came back all the way towards the end, but it was too little too late. The typical Call of Duty cliche, you have to play perfect hard played. Map number 2, 6-4 win on the Tuscan Search and Destroy. Then, of course, we went after those two maps to a completely different outlook on the series. It was a dominant map 3 performance from Florida Gulf Coast University, a 3-0 win there, and then a 18-point hardpoint win in map number 4. Forced a map number 5. Would have been a reverse sweep there for the side of Florida Gulf Coast University had they had a bit more tenacity in the search and destroy. And by tenacity, I mean don't choke a 1 versus 3.
Multiple times. It's just, you're in the group of death. I mean, you already mentioned that you have Northwood, you have Michigan in this group. You can't do that against teams like that. Again, West Virginia, they're a good team, a great team even, right? They played really well in their tier 2, but
yep.
Against these top caliber teams, you cannot be making the mistakes that they did. Not only that, but making it in consecutive maps of search and destroy. That's something they have to go back to the drawing board. Maybe it was a slightly off night. Again, they can't, not to take away from them, right? It was a valiant effort. They tried to pull off the reverse sweep, but just the search and destroy was so frustrating to watch, given how well they were playing that first half of it. The second leg of it just looked like a completely different team.
Well, Mountaineers, they will take themselves to a 1-0 lead inside of Group F in the Eastern region for the CCL playoff groups. Florida Gulf Coast University, this feels like it was their best chance to not only have a 1-0 lead, but it's going to be a very, very difficult climb to get out of their group now, specifically after losing to the Mountaineers, because again, you said Michigan, sure, but Northwood is going to be a different animal when you have to go up against them. And with the way the Florida Gulf Coast looked in some of their maps, sure, you might be able to go toe-to-toe in some aspects, but you're just not going to be able to beat Northwood, specifically in the search and destroys, if the play continues to look like that. As we look ahead, though, next week, playoffs will continue here for the CCL. It's going to be at 9 o'clock Eastern for the start time on that stream, not 7:30 that you're used to. So look for the stream at 9 o'clock Eastern next week. Obviously, we will have our matches as we get closer and closer towards that match day, but that's going to do it for here on the Bravo tonight. Great matches across the board from Alpha to Bravo. And across the CCL from today, because there were some bangers that we got to commentate over, that we got to watch in the background. And again, if you are enjoying the CCL or it's your first time here, the playoffs are the most impactful and important portion of the season. The most fun as well for not only us casters, but the players, spectators, you the fans, and everybody in the production staff that goes in and does things around here at the CCL. So we will go ahead and say goodbye, send things off. We will see you again next week at 9 o'clock Eastern, and that will be Monday, May 2nd. So with that being said, my name is Ben McCormiel. With me, Cash, Benji, and Zenny back on production. We'll see you next week for more CCL action, and the playoffs will continue.